Hey, Dr. Brooke here with another epic episode of Dr. Brooke on the Block. I am joined by my co-pilot today, Brian Dement, who was the Chief Marketing Officer for Athenium Blockchain for 3 years. And he resigned in 2021 in order to focus more on Bitcoin and blockchain education. Love that because I'm all about it. This led him to author the book, The Bitcoin Evangelism, which is an Amazon bestseller. In addition to his professional experience as an executive in the blockchain industry, he began as an entrepreneur for 14 years since the age of 22, when he started a small business with his wife, Alyssa. They have grown that into a chain of locations, a parent company that invests in small businesses, digital assets, and DeFi. Brian has been investing in Bitcoin and the wider crypto market since 2014, so he would be considered an early adopter, and advising entities on their digital asset strategies since 2016. Welcome to the show, Brian. So excited you're here.
Thanks, Dr. Brooke. I'm really excited to be on. So I'm a listener as well. I've heard some of your episodes,
nice.
and you always seem to have a lot of fun. So I'm glad to join the experience.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's exciting to know that you have listened to the show. And, we bring a lot of energy and a lot of fun topics and people doing great things in this space. And so you will know that the first question I ask all my co-pilots on the show is, what is their intro story into Web3? How did you get here? I guess, how did you begin your journey in 2014 to getting to this point now in 2022?
Yeah. Well, so the first time I ever heard about Bitcoin was I think it was 2012, 2013. Everybody has that story where they disregard it, right? Like everybody has,
Yes.
I heard about it, disregarded it. And then like they have the later time when they got orange pilled or red pilled or whatever you want to call it. And so so 2012, I never watched college football, but I happened to be watching Saturday game day. Maybe I was bored or something on a Saturday. And before the games, I don't know if you remember this or if you watch sports, but they'll have the announcers kind of line up in front of the camera, but in the background, they'll have the audience and they'll have like people in the bleachers and stuff. And I remember there was a kid that had a big sign in the background. This wasn't like the focus of the show. The announcers were talking about the game, but this kid in the background had a sign that said, "Hey mom, send Bitcoin." And it had a QR code on it. And I didn't think too much of it. I just remember thinking like, oh, but what is that? Like obviously there's a QR code. So maybe he's asking his mom to send something. And so I remembered it a couple weeks later and I Googled it and I looked it up. And it turns out that this kid had, Bitcoiners all over the world got so excited because this was how little press crypto got back in the day, that the going line online was, Bitcoin is on ESPN. And it's not that it was the focus of the show. It just happened to be in the background and everybody went bananas. And people from all over the world sent this kid Bitcoin. And I guess he got, at the time, this is 2012. So who knows if hopefully he held on to it, but it was like $24,000 worth of Bitcoin was sent to him through the QR code because all these Bitcoiners were so excited that Bitcoin was on ESPN. So these guys were just sending him Bitcoin. And I remember thinking, this is so stupid that I'm never going to think that this is cool. Like I remember specifically thinking like, this is so dorky. And like that, I totally wrote it off. And then about a year later, I had some friends that were pretty like serious people, friends that I took pretty seriously. And they had told me, hey, maybe look into this. And I remember thinking like, you guys are so smart. Why are you guys being fooled by this? It's like this gimmicky thing that's in the background of ESPN and it's for pirate currency and, all the bad things that you hear about crypto and stuff like that. And so anyways, I actually started studying Bitcoin and kind of monetary policy and things like that because I wanted to disprove my friends. I wanted to show them how dumb they were. And in that experience, in that kind of process of trying to disprove from a skeptical standpoint, I became a believer. I thought it was a really, really important fundamental change in the way that we change value. And I think the one thing that really, like, if I had a light bulb moment, I think it was when, and I maybe had already been buying a little bit of Bitcoin by this point, but when I was really like totally sold out was I heard Andreas Antonopoulos on the Joe Rogan Experience. This is, I think, maybe his first or second time being on there. And the thing that set it off for me was he said that in the history of computer science, we've never had a way to cap something digital. So like if you type a word in a document, you can just copy and paste it endlessly. Music, digital music, when music went from being analog, like in CDs and records and all that kind of stuff, then when it went to MP3 files, that changed the music industry, because all of a sudden you have LimeWire and Napster and all these websites that basically took all of the monetary value out of music, because the files went digital and you could replicate them endlessly. Like it destroys monetary value when you can make something infinite, right? And so he said that this was the solution to that problem of digital things being endlessly replicated. I'm like, that's so profound. And so sometimes you hear that, and I remember I probably heard that before that point, but sometimes it just takes a second or third time for somebody to sit down and say, like, no, if you want money to actually be digital, you need to find a way to make it capped and to have a finite supply. And so that was the light bulb moment for me. And then I jumped in, and then, you know, that the rest is kind of history. Through the investing process, making connections in the industry, I got to join a project called, like you referenced earlier, called Athenium. I got to do the marketing for that for 3 years. But in that process, I saw, even with smart money, we were going into venture capitalists and we were pitching our blockchain. Like, we were education centered, like blockchain, where we were focused on all sorts of really cool innovations and stuff. But we were going in and pitching these guys with millions of dollars. They were ready to sign checks. And then at the end of the presentation, they would say, "What's blockchain?" And we're like, "Oh, well, you guys called us into this meeting and we're pitching like level 4 or 5 complicated blockchain type stuff to you. And then you're asking us like the fundamental questions." And they're like, "Yeah, and what's this Bitcoin thing?" It's like, "Oh, okay." So after being in enough of those meetings, I took a step back, and that's when I resigned to write my book, because I said, you know what, we need to go back to step 1 and step 2. There's so much smart money out there, still smart money, that doesn't understand this stuff. And so I want to be a part of this, just like what you're doing. I mean, a podcast was what changed my mind on this. So podcasting, content creation, books, articles, these are the ways that we educate people on this paradigm shift. And so I thought this is really important. So more so than being a part of a specific project, I took a step back and I said, I want to be part of the education and this wave of educating the masses on this new paradigm.
Wow, that is super incredible. What a journey that you took from step 1, originally seeing that photo or that, you know, the video on ESPN, to getting to the point that you are today. Sometimes I always say it's those small, pivotal, inconsequential things that may happen on a daily basis that we don't recognize as like these massive game changers. And that particular Saturday morning has completely shifted your entire life over the last, 8 years, since 2014. Even before then, you know, maybe like almost a decade now, to get you to a spot where you're being called into this space. You're being called into this space to educate. And my journey is very different, but similar in the sense, like, I didn't ask for this. I wasn't like, I'm going into this. It's just like, okay, you're here and this is what you're doing. So it's awesome. Very, very cool.
Thank you.
So tell us about the book, like, without giving it all away. Tell us, you know, because I want people to get copies of the book and read the actual book. But what is Bitcoin evangelism? Like, how would you define that?
So I'm all about giving away a little bit of the book, because I think it's one of those things where, you know, I want people to think, you know, understand the content. I believe it's good content. Of course, I'm biased towards it, but people have a lot of people have bought the book, so I think that represents something. But for anybody that wants just even a free sample of the book, the first chapter is on YouTube. So it's a text audible version of it. So you can read it. Text comes up on the screen, but it's the audible, so you can listen to it. But if you just go to my channel, it's just YouTube, Brian Dement, and it's on there, the first chapter. But the first chapter, and whether you like Bitcoin, whether you like crypto, whether you like, you know, just the general idea of blockchain, I think the first chapter speaks to everybody, because while I do think Bitcoin in particular, and like I told you off air, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I do think that Bitcoin is the solution for unsound money. So when it comes to fixing money, I think Bitcoin is the answer. When it comes to fixing other problems, I think that blockchain technology that becomes decentralized is probably going to be the fix, whether that's medical research or voting or any of these things that both sides. I mean, when Hillary Clinton loses an election, the Democrats say that the voting was rigged. When Trump loses the election, the Republicans say voting is rigged. People agree that we want certain systems, decentralized. And that really was the revolution in Bitcoin is not just, I mean, that's what the revolution of blockchain is. It's not that, for me, the finite supply thing was the thing that set it off, but the true disruption is decentralization. When you can take centralization out of the picture, middlemen out of the picture, that is what makes the blockchain so profound. So the first chapter of the book is called Resistance to Adoption. And I just go through several different technologies where there was incredible resistance to that technology. Like, for example, electricity. I'm in a lighted room. You're in a lighted room.
Me
I mean,
too.
it's right. We're sitting where it's just common sense that you have electricity. There's nothing scary or terrifying about electricity. But in the early days of of electricity, there was, propaganda everywhere, anti-electricity propaganda from the incumbents. Like the kerosene industry did not want electricity to take hold because then people wouldn't buy kerosene anymore. And so Rockefeller and all the kerosene guys, they put out these stories of houses burning down because of electricity and all sorts of problematic things that could happen. And rightfully so. In the early days, electricity, there wasn't safety features. They didn't have grounded wires. They didn't even have sheathing at first. So imagine if you had electricity in your home, you didn't have the wires in the wall. You had wires running up the wall with no sheathing. So if you had a 2-year-old running around, they could just touch the wire. So yes, in one sense, you had propaganda that was kind of trying to crush the industry. In another sense, the technology wasn't fully formed yet. And so, you needed some progress to actually come along. And so there was a reason to be scared, but then there was other people like making people more scared. And you sit back and you see that exact same thing happening in Bitcoin and the crypto industry is, it's not as robust as it's going to be. It's still rough around the edges, right? There's still rug pulls and there's still scams and there's still, uncertainty about this technology, but there's something there that works. And we can see it. If you go on and you try out a DeFi platform, if you go on and you try, like, I don't hold any NFTs, but like people that they are literally acquiring digital ownership of artwork through a non-fungible token. I can be my own bank with Bitcoin. I can do all these things. So yes, even though it's a little rough around the edges right now, electricity was rough around the edges. Automobiles were rough around the edges. The printing press was rough around the edges at first. And so it gives that first chapter will give anybody that is in Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain, it will give them confidence to see past, to have a low, we talk about time preference, to have a low time preference, to not care about what happens today, but to have a long vision on this. And so that first chapter, I think, is really, it applies to everybody in this space. And I think you'll be very bullish after reading that chapter, and you'll be really excited that we're in a bear market right now. You don't need to be in a bull market to be excited.
Yes, I love it. I tell people bear markets are incredible opportunities to learn, like get the knowledge you need so that when the bull market like starts again and the bull's out running, you have a lot of pieces to really fundamentally like make great investment decisions, or you could have made great investment decisions during the bear market. But my question is, why did you? Okay, so it sounds like the book is very blockchain driven. This whole entire show is very blockchain driven. I am not, a maximalist by any sort on anything. I do hold NFTs. I have, a mixed bag of different cryptos. I do utilize DeFi protocols. There's different, verticals in blockchain. Why did you call the book Bitcoin Evangelism then?
Yeah. Well, the primary focus of the book is Bitcoin, and it is our current monetary system. I think that the first thing that needs to be fixed before you fix everything else is the money. And so I think it's great that Bitcoin was the first application of that. And I think it's the most obvious thing to a lot of people. And so a lot of people, I don't think they see the inherent flaws with our financial system in terms of centralized finance or TradFi, like, why do I need to have DeFi? You need to be a little bit more of a sophisticated investor to understand why taking out the middleman in a loan process is important. And while there's plenty of people that are into DeFi, I don't think the single mom that's just kind of scraping by, but is feeling the effects of inflation. I don't think DeFi speaks to that. I think DeFi solves a lot of other problems, but I think Bitcoin in particular, a finite, scarce, censorship resistant, immutable, all the qualities of Bitcoin. I think that becomes a little bit more apparent to, so if it's about educating the masses, if it's about educating all the people, I mean, we're in a time where inflation is so in our face that people are asking questions. How do I solve this problem? And I think Bitcoin is the solution to that particular problem. So when I go into the history of the Federal Reserve, I go into the structure of how how central banks work. I mean, for example, I'm working on right now, I'm working on an animation that's going to come up on my YouTube pretty soon, where I talk about, it's just kind of like a prima facie proof that central banking is fraud. So, for example, Dr. Brooke, if you and I, right, preach it.
Like, oh my God. Tell people all the time. We don't have a US dollar. People stop talking about the DEXI. I'm like, it's not a US dollar. It's a Federal Reserve note. Oh my God.
That's a company, right? It's like, it's a private company. But anyway. Yeah, so Dr. Brooke, if you and I started a company and we created 100 shares, you own 50 shares, I own 50 shares.
Yeah.
If I go out and I say, hey, guess what, Dr. Brooke, like, I'm going to give you 5 more shares. So your 50 shares are now 55 shares. You're like, sweet, I have more shares, but I don't tell you that I printed 100 more shares. I'm keeping 95 of the extra shares. I'm in a business partnership that's diluting your shares. And if I'm not transparent in that, that's fraud. I'm being fraudulent towards my partner, and I'm extracting value. So although your number of shares is going up, your percentage of ownership in the company is going down. And so people don't recognize that happening. And that's why central banks exist, is to dilute the share of anybody that holds cash. Billionaires don't hold cash. They hold less than 1% of their value in cash. They know that cash is a toxic asset. And so there needs to be, for the average person, we need to be able to start understanding this, is that we can deflect our cash into sound money. And so I think that fixes a lot of problems, but I think it is important for people. That's why I have a whole chapter in the book dedicated to the breakdown of different crypto asset classes. You were talking about that. There's these different verticals. And so I think that's one of the number one questions I get from people is, well, what's the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum? And, I try to give really basic grounded examples, like real world. Okay, think about your iPhone. Bitcoin is Apple Pay, then Ethereum's the App Store. They're not in conflict with one another. They actually complement one another. The Apple phone is better. The iPhone is better because it has Apple Pay and it has the App Store. And so I think that has a more synergistic message than just straight Bitcoin maximalism of Bitcoin's the only coin. And I do believe that at some point, other things like DeFi and NFTs could be built on top of Bitcoin, but I still don't think that excludes other blockchains from existing. I think that that's how protocols evolve over time. Protocols get better. The internet was a pretty basic protocol when it started out, but over time we've developed email layers to it. We've enabled video streaming layers to the internet and protocols so we stack technologies. And so I think it's important to understand what these different protocols do, what these different blockchains do, because I think that's the key to a truly decentralized future.
Yeah, absolutely. So then what would you say? Okay, this is a question that I have, and one that I feel like I have not gotten a good solid answer on. It does not change my viewpoint on blockchain by any means, but so for those of you listening that may not know this, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin ever. Like, that's it. That's when Brian talks about a finite supply, 21 million Bitcoin ever. That's it. So they're then broken down into smaller pieces called Satoshis. And so you could get fragmented pieces of a Bitcoin when you purchase it. You don't have to purchase a whole Bitcoin. And therefore, my issue here is, okay, 21 million. And let's say you have 10 million and I have 11 million. Well, me and Brian are both consuming the entire, supply of Bitcoin. Everybody who has their Bitcoin, most people aren't liquidating it. They're hanging on to it. They're not utilizing it for any purchases. You're not going to go to Starbucks and say, here, take some of this Satoshi from me. That is where I see, like, I can't get past, like, I'm struggling with how it's going to be used as an actual form of monetaries, like of money transfer, versus just a store of value. Because right now it just feels like a store of value. What like, how would it,
that's a great question.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think it's just a matter of what circles you run in with the Bitcoin community. So
all my people are holding right now. So maybe that's it.
I'm a hodler of last resort. I've never once since 2014 sold a Bitcoin, but I spend Bitcoin every single day. I literally spend Bitcoin every day. Like I bought here, like this right here is a bag of coffee from El Salvador. I bought from a roaster down there. They accepted Bitcoin. I buy my meat. I buy all of my meat in Bitcoin. I spend all of my marketing dollars through Twitter. I've disintermediated. My follower count is growing. I have like 6,000 followers on Twitter, but I just started. Twitter's new. My Twitter following is growing like crazy. I don't pay for Twitter ads. I just pay sats, like 100 sats for people to interact and reshare, retweet things and stuff like that. So Twitter doesn't get any of those ad dollars, but the people that are interacting with my page and bringing me more followers and telling their friends about it, I'm paying them directly. So it's like decentralizing the ad model. And it's so easy to use. And so if you use layer 1 Bitcoin, you can't do that because the transaction fee on a Bitcoin transaction is like 1,500 sats. It might only be 20 cents or something like that. But if I'm sending 2 cents, I'm not going to pay 20 cents for the transaction fee.
Exactly.
But with Bitcoin Lightning, I don't know how often if you use Bitcoin Lightning, most of the transactions are free. I mean, if I'm sending 100 sats to somebody, there's no fee and it's instantaneous. So it's amazing. I'll pay 100 invoices in about 5 minutes. I'll just go through my Twitter DMs and just scan send, and it's instantaneous payment, no fees or anything like that. So I use Bitcoin every single day, and I'm somebody that will never sell a Bitcoin. So I'm both ends of that spectrum. And so I would just say that I think that we're in the early stages of people using that. And I've found that my buying power has gone up pretty tremendously over time, the better I hold it. Where my dad and my grandpa and every generation before, they all have stories about how much more a dollar used to buy. But I already have stories for my kids about how much less my Bitcoin used to buy. And so it's like the exact opposite story of every single generation before. But I'm telling my kids, look at, hey, you guys see this coffee we're drinking? Hey guys, this meat, the steak that we're having for dinner tonight, we bought all that in Bitcoin. So I just think it's a matter of seeking those things out. And yes, you're right. I can't go into Target right now and spend Bitcoin. I think that's coming though. I mean, Fidelity opened up Bitcoin and I believe Ethereum. You can purchase Bitcoin and Ethereum in your Fidelity accounts. I think Strike they announced it by December of this year. So I don't think it's going to happen because I haven't heard another announcement. We're in December, but they were saying that Walmart might have Strike Lightning functionality for checkout soon. So I think when that happens, I believe that you'll see an uptake in greater, salability of Bitcoin being accepted at more places. So I think it's possible. Now I do get that argument. And I think that I've seen every year that's gone by, I've seen more and more actual real world utility of Bitcoin.
Yeah. So people are actually, it's interesting to hear you say that when you talk, because I've only, like I said, or you said, it depends on what kind of circles you're running around in, because I got a lot of people hodling, like literally it is on a ledger account. The ledger's in the safe. They're not utilizing, touching nothing. Right. And here you are buying coffee, meat, doing all kinds of things, like actually transacting and in commerce with it. So that's an interesting perspective. So thank you for sharing that. Because absolutely. I do have a question going back into like the blockchain realm in terms of, you talked about Bitcoin being Apple Pay and Ethereum being like the app store. Ethereum, the beginning story, I'm sure you're aware, kind of started out like, hey, we want to build contracts. We want to do all this thing on top of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was like, nope, like we're not, we're just this, like, this is all we're doing. Right. The Lightning Network then came a little later, but Ethereum was like, we want to do these smart contracts. We want to do all this stuff. And they really, in my opinion, kind of blew the space wide open to allow blockchain technology to be used more than just a currency driven type thing, and made it to where we can utilize it in so many different facets with smart contracts, with real estate, with voting, with medical records, like all these different things that are coming out with in terms of Web3. Do you see any I'm sure you do, like, benefits to that. And can you speak on that at all? Like, smart contracts and.
Yeah, I think smart contracts are really exciting. I mean,
They are, right?
you talk to any like businessman. My brother just started reading my book the other day, and so
I want to read it. I'm gonna get a copy.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But he has all these questions now, and it's like, he's excited about Bitcoin, but then he keeps asking about smart contracts. He runs a big construction company and stuff, and so yeah. I mean, I think that different people hear different aspects of blockchain, and they're very excited about different components because there's a lot of different things you could be excited about. And so I think when it comes to business and commerce, smart contracts could reduce a lot of cost. I mean, if I don't have to pay an escrow service to escrow my house, but I can run the purchase or the sale of a house through a smart contract at some point, that reduces a lot of cost, and it actually reduces a lot of friction. We see this when you go from analog technology to digital technologies. There's so much more efficiency that comes with that. And so people use it more. And so one of the examples I use in my writing is, and people think like, for example, escrow. So we're talking about escrow in particular. Okay. The escrow industry is $1 billion industry in the United States. Okay. So digital escrow or smart contracts for escrow services, that could be $1 billion. People think, I think it's just thinking too small. That could be $1 billion industry. No. You're thinking way too small. Look at the analog. Look at paper maps, and you can look at any analog technology that gets disrupted by digital. Paper map industry was a $40 million a year business at its peak. And so you think about it. I don't know how old you are, but like when I was a kid, we still had paper maps, and you'd have like Thomas Guide, and your parents would pull it out one time a year when you would go on a trip. And that was it. That was the only time you used a paper map, was like once or twice a year. Now think about digital maps. We use it. I use one every day. My Waze is always on. It's always telling me where the police are at. It's always telling me my directions. But think about the industries.
There's something on the road.
Exactly. But so it gives you not only the functionality of a map telling you where you're going, but now it's giving you warnings about real-time things that are happening, traffic warnings. A paper map can't do that. It reduces so much friction. It adds so much functionality that it's actually, the market becomes bigger than the previously, existing market. So if escrow was $1 billion industry, digital escrow could be orders of magnitude larger, because again, the paper map industry, $40 million at its peak. How big is the digital maps industry? It's actually kind of hard to quantify, but think about the industries that exist that didn't even exist before. Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, that entire gig economy only exists because of digital maps. Amazon could not exist on the scale that it does without logistics based on GPS maps. Same thing with UPS and all these different things. So you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of gross domestic product based on digital maps. So that gets really interesting. Just talking about smart contracts just for escrow, not any of the other things that they can do, but just for escrow services. So now we're talking about not a $1 billion escrow industry. You're talking about a 10 billion, 20 billion, $100 billion escrow industry, because digital always makes things more efficient, more usable, more accessible to more people. And therefore the market is much, much bigger. And then you can add, there's probably going to be functionality in escrow services that didn't exist before. So yeah, when I think about that, it's really easy to get excited about smart contracts and things for that purpose. And so, yeah, I love Bitcoin for what it does for sound money, but to me, it's naive not to think about other components within blockchain and what they can do.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, we know, like we were mentioning earlier, there's 800 currently, as of, I want to say it was like May of 2021, there was 861 different blockchains. And these are, then these blockchains have different ecosystems built on top of them. And then the whole space gets convoluted and confusing to a lot of people, because a lot of blockchain educators, like you and I would say that you and I are very different than a lot of people, because most of the people want to just talk at someone, and they're using all these big terminology, and they're using all these fancy words and doing all these things, and really not breaking it down to the basic like use case, right? Like, who cares about the technology if somebody doesn't, like, you don't have to understand how your cell phone picks up a signal to make a phone call across the world. You just know that you need to dial the correct numbers to reach your aunt in India or whatever country, right? like so many people right now, most of the listeners know this by now. I always tell them, be careful of the people you watch on YouTube, because they might be like shilling you something and trying to get you into some project that they're just going to basically run and dump or pump and dump. And so it's really about educating people with the proper, like, what is the magnitude of blockchain? How can blockchain really shift the world in which we're living now for the better? And, it sounds like that's what you're doing through Bitcoin Evangelism, through the book, through your educational protocols that you're taking people on. And I just have to commend you for that, because it sounds like we're very like-minded in that.
Yeah, I was going to say, back at you. Yeah, I mean, this is why, but it's because it comes out of a passion, right? Like, it's very clear when I hear you talk, and when I've heard you talk on previous episodes, you're passionate about it. And so, but to your point real quick too, about the scams and stuff, I know that wasn't even the question, but just as an insider look on somebody that was the head of marketing so if somebody's going to scam you, it's going to be the head of marketing for a blockchain, right? Like, my role would have been like, thankfully I like to consider myself a person of integrity, but like, my role is the guy that's trying to scam you because they're trying to sell you something. So other blockchain projects would reach out to me, and they would say things like, hey, let's announce either a merger or a partner.
You were saying something about your brother.
And smart contracts.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got through a lot of that.
I think that part I think I was saying something else, but
you were. I let the recording go because I was just like, I'm just gonna let it keep going, so I don't have to. I could just cut the middle out of there. But okay, so we were talking the smart contracts. You said your brother was reading the book.
Yeah. Well, I think that just led into how we were talking about the market cap.
Oh, no. No. Sorry. So we had transitioned. So pick up. So you're a chief marketing officer, and that's the kind of things that you guys would do.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's
start
from there.
Just start that part over.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, in my role as chief marketing officer, those are the people that are trying to sell you something. Those are the people that you should probably be kind of wary of. But anyways, my team and we genuinely were trying to put forth a solution that was going to better the world. So thankfully there are projects like that out there. But there would be other projects that would come along, and they would message me or call me or whatever. And they would just say things like, hey, let's talk about a merger. Like, what if we did a merger or like a joint announcement, some sort of partnership. And then we'll all kind of like a day or two before the announcement, we'll buy some of the coins and of your project and our project. And so that'll start to get people's attention. Then a couple of days later, we'll roll out a big announcement, and then we'll let the market purchase a bunch of the coins, and then we can just dump them on them. And people, that wasn't just like one time I got that message, multiple times, many times. People, like, it's because I think certain people enter the crypto space, not with any of the intentions to better the world, but just to enrich themselves. It's really sad. And, unfortunately, one of the consequences of, the kind of the free market of the crypto system, it is a free market. It is a bit of a Wild West, sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways. I mean, the Wild West was really cool, but it was also very dangerous.
Right.
And so, anyways, that's, one of those things that was just a common occurrence. And so for people to look out for that, just because somebody's on the inside of a project doesn't mean that they know where the price is going. And if they are talking about like something where they know where the price is going, be extra wary of that, because they might be just trying to sell you a bag of goods that they're going to get rid of. And people ask me that all the time, like with Bitcoin, hey, do you know if the price is going up or down? Or do you know if the price of Ethereum is going up or down? I'm like, let me tell you, I was in a blockchain project and I couldn't even tell you if the price of that coin was going up or down. And you just don't know, because sometimes we would make an announcement about something cool we were doing, and then the price would go down for some reason. And then like a week later, somebody would tweet about us that was influential, and then the price would go up. I didn't even know that they were going to tweet about us. So people that tell you emphatically where something is going, especially in the short term, be super, super cautious of them, because if they do know where it's going, it's usually artificial, and it's usually probably a scam.
Okay, I'm smiling as you're saying that, not because I think this is like at all a good thing, but because I'm like, I want to ask you about this, and I know we're coming up like close to the time that I want to really kind of keep the episode in, but I definitely want you to talk about this as much as you can. Alameda Research and FTX. when CZ of Binance, CZ is the CEO, for those of you who are listening, of Binance, and he turned around and basically said, I'm selling off all my FTT tokens, which are the exchange tokens of the FTX exchange. Basically created a lot of fear in the marketplace, a lot of run on the bank, so to speak. People are freaking out. They were also selling whatever. Alameda Research, who happened to be an arm of FTX, who was their quote unquote, to not get all in the weeds and get people all really confused, they did the investing, so to speak, with the FTX money. Well, Alameda Research Group turned around and said, hey, CZ, we're going to buy your stuff back at $22 per token or whatever. They were really trying to hold that $22 per token price because they knew if it fell any further down, it was just going to go basically to become worthless. And so that is what you're talking about. Or when you're talking about it, that's the thing that went through my mind, is that market manipulation
at a much higher level. Yes.
Internally, huh?
Yeah. At a much higher level, that they were playing with big boy dollars.
Higher level, like billions of dollars lost, in all of that debacle. I appreciate all of you who might be listening that reached out to me and were freaked out about, my involvement in FTX. You know that I was not involved in FTX. I shared that with you all, but you also know that I'm also a big proponent of not your keys, not your coins. So I don't have stuff on centralized exchanges. I utilize centralized exchanges to make my purchases, but I move it along. And so that's what I educate you on. But Brian, back to the whole FTX Alameda thing. Do you have anything to say from a marketing perspective?
Oh gosh. I mean, it just seems like it was intentionally a scam from the beginning. You get the details of it. And I mean, the collusion between that exchange and then like political parties, and then those political parties sending money to Ukraine, and then Ukraine investing back in FTX. And I mean, it's just so murky. And I didn't even get to watch all of Sam Bankman-Fried's New York Times thing yesterday. I'm going to go back and watch that. But there's people like Kevin O'Leary is tweeting about, you know what? I think he's genuinely sorry, and I'm still with the kid. He's like saying stuff like that. I'm like, come on, this is they're trying to cover this up. The New York Times is writing puff pieces on this guy, and he defrauded people, and like at a really high level. And just, I mean, the things that are going on, it's really tragic. And ultimately, I think that these exchanges failing, I know people that had, an entire Bitcoin or like 10 Ethereum on Celsius or on BlockFi or whatever, they're getting stuff frozen, and that sucks. But I think these are the brush fires that need to happen in the crypto industry so that the giant blazing fire doesn't happen. And so I think ultimately it's good. It's just really painful right now. But going back to like CZ's interaction with him, I know a lot of people in the crypto space were talking about how great that was that CZ exposed this fraud and things like that. People that are saying, yeah, we needed this to happen for a healthy. But yes, I think it's good that he triggered that and made that happen. But what was he doing with the FTT tokens in the first place? Like, I don't think anybody's clean here. He knows how these things work. And I just tell people all the time, be cautious of exchanges that have their own token and that they leverage that in different ways. Now, Binance has stated that they don't use any of their BNB coin to leverage certain things that they, but their users do. So it gets kind of murky in that sense, because there's a lot of leveraged loans based on BNB and that sort of thing. So anyways, I just think that there's, even the good actors are kind of dirty in this thing. And, there's just, it's a really, really messy thing. So it all comes back to, like, this is part of the ethos of crypto. Like you said, not your keys, not your coins. We shouldn't be beholden to these exchanges. We shouldn't be beholden to the sketchy things that these different projects are doing. If we're taking care of our assets like we should, then we're pretty much immune to this. And it's our responsibility, if we want this industry to grow, not just you and I, but like to the everyday user, to tell your friends, when you tell them like, hey, go on Coinbase and buy some Bitcoin, tell them immediately about self-custody as well. And not everybody has to go buy a ledger. If you have $100 worth of Bitcoin, like, go put it on a software wallet on your phone. It's still in self-custody, and you can still back it up with the seed phrase. I mean, you can secure your seed phrase in such an easy way. You literally just write it down on a piece of paper. You write it down on 5 pieces of paper and keep it in 5 different places. It's fine. And I actually hid, somebody found it, but I hid a 3 million sat wallet in my book. And so I had 12 words hidden throughout the book that if you found them, you could like unlock the seed phrase for a Bitcoin wallet. And it was just a good like cool example for people to see how easy you could hide a Bitcoin wallet in plain daylight. I had a lot of people buy my book, and I hid it well enough in the book that only one person ever found it. And so, you can get creative and you can secure your own stuff in very unique ways. Right. And so, it's just, I think that what you're doing as far as educating people on the responsible side of it, like, yes, play in the Wild West. Like there's things that will be very beneficial for society that come out of the Wild West of what we're in. But in the Wild West, you had to carry a revolver. You had to protect yourself, So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, people understand the concept. Like, they have the keys to their house. They don't just let anybody, just come on in, open door, unlocked, like that's the kind of idea. But we've become so accustomed to just, oh, we forget our password. We'll just ask Google, forget password, and da 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 da. And so they have this idea or this notion that they can't do this. And I love the idea that you said, you could put all the words in different places and have them, it's kind of like, I love Elon Musk. I'm a huge Elon Musk fan, and he's always the guy that does the little Easter eggs, and people are trying to decrypt his Twitter, like what is he saying? Is there going to be a stock split? What's happening? Like he's so great at that. And I love following those little Easter eggs around.
Totally.
So awesome, Brian. Well, how can people get in touch with you? I'm going to first put the link in the book and all your contact information. So don't feel like you need to spell anything out, but let us know where they can go, so I know what links to put in.
I really appreciate that. And thank you for the platform. Thank you for the audience. And it's just fun talking to you about this stuff.
Yeah, it's so fun.
I think we're all, like we said, we're really passionate about it. So we can talk about it all day. But yeah, as far as my book, it's on Amazon. We just came out with the Spanish translation. I had a really big demand for the book in El Salvador and in Argentina, which is really cool because the El Salvador, obviously, because Bitcoin's national currency. In Argentina, they have like almost triple digit inflation. And so the sound money thing is really, really important to them down there. Yeah. We have a big, in some of the Southern African countries, we have a big demand, but the English version works there, which is great. Yeah. And so, it's been really exciting to be part of this like international movement with helping people understand sound money in these regions. And so anyways, that's on Amazon. The book, Twitter is probably like I'm most responsive on Twitter. I do SAT giveaways all the time on Twitter. So if you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, same thing. I put out some cool content on there. And on YouTube, it's just my name, Brian DeMint.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Brian. It's been a really fun conversation. Like you said, we can go for hours just talking about all pieces of it. So we won't do that to you guys. But for now, that is the ride with Brian DeMint. As we pull this train into the station, you all know the drill. Exit to your right, and we will see you on the next one.
You made it. Congratulations. That wasn't so bad, was it? I hope you laughed and learned a little bit more about this Web3 universe and how simple and fun it can really be. Would you be so kind as to leave us a review and share it with your friends and family? It would mean so much to get this out to more people as we embark on the greatest transfer of wealth that has ever happened in human history. Can't wait to see you on the next one.